John Mackey, I am so excited and so honored to speak with you today. So, thank you, first of all, for being here to chat with us at the Center for Social Capital. I appreciate it very much.
Thanks for inviting me to come on. I appreciate it.
So, there's a lot of things I want to talk to you about today. Obviously, you have so much to say, and you've said a lot of it. But first of all, I want to just let our readers and viewers know about this amazing opportunity to get to know you on a very deep and personal level that maybe they haven't been able to before because of the very powerful and personal revelations in this new book that you have. And it's called The Whole Story: Adventures in Love, Life, and Capitalism, which is a marvelous title, by the way. Obviously, it's a nice takeoff on the name of the incredible retail outlet that you began so many years ago, and that changed the industry. But I love the whole subtext and subtitle with Adventures in Love, Life, and Capitalism. And it really digs into some very deep personal reasons, not just for how and why you founded the company, but on your life, the direction you took with it. And though you decided not to be a philosopher, this is a very philosophical book in a whole lot of ways. And I would just like to know, first of all, what made you write this type of book and why now?
Before I answer that question, I also want to point out that the the title, The Whole Story, connects to Whole Foods, but the subtitle, Love, Life, and Capitalism, the Love Life refers to my new business that I'm starting up called Love Life. So I've tied these two together in the title and the subtitle. Now, why did I write this book? Three reasons come to mind. The first one is that it's my final gift to Whole Foods. I'm done with Whole Foods. I'm moving on. I've retired from Whole Foods a year and a half ago now, 18 months ago. And I dedicated the book to all team members, all Whole Foods Market team members, past, present, and future. And that this is our story. And yes, it's told from a first person perspective, but I hope that this will be a book that team members at Whole Foods will read for hopefully decades to come. And so it completes me with Whole Foods. It's my final gift. And that's the first reason. The second reason is that I wrote it for myself, because the thing about writing is two things. One is that you learn a lot about yourself when you write a book like this. I had to relive almost 50 years of my life, and chat year by year, event by event. And we also interviewed about 30 people that they remembered a few things I'd forgotten. And when they reminded me of it, then I got back into that space. So I've been able to relive it to a certain extent. And that's been rich for me. And I mean, 50 years sounds like a long time, but it's funny when you're doing it, when you're writing the book, it all flows together, and it doesn't seem like it's that long of a period of time. But I realize it is a long period of time. It's half a century. Uh, and the third reason I wrote it was, but tying in with that is that when you're writing is inherently creative. And so as you are writing, you are actually putting pieces together that you'd never put together before. You actually have certain realizations that you'd never realized before. The act of writing about it is inherently a creative act, and it's also a synthesizing act. So I came to understand myself better and Whole Foods better by writing this book. So part of that was, done for myself in a way. And the third thing is, I think this book, it's written it's like a novel. It's meant to be a narrative. It flows. It's got dialogue in it. And I tried to be as candid as possible. And how naive I was when I started out, and how many mistakes I made, and how foolish I was in so many regards, and mistakes and lessons that I learned. So I think it's a book that can help entrepreneurs of any kind. business, social entrepreneurs, because it's a journey. Entrepreneurship's creative, but it's also this journey. And the whole story describes my journey as a business person, but also as an entrepreneur and as a creative man. And I think entrepreneurs will really like this book. And I think people that it's a good story. And so I think people that like stories will like this book. So I did it. I wrote the book for all of these reasons and probably some other reasons that I haven't yet made conscious to myself.
So I love what you said there on so many levels. One of my businesses, I help people, CEOs write their books, and I always talk about how it's this journey, and so often they'll come to me and they just start spitting out facts and talking about things they've done, and I said, and I say, sit back and let's think about the transformation that you've gone through and how that happened, how that relates to what you did. And so I love that you said that from a writer's perspective, from an editor's perspective, but also from an entrepreneur's perspective. So much of what you share in this book it's extraordinarily helpful, I think, not just from a business perspective, but from a universal life perspective and the life of an entrepreneur, because I think being an entrepreneur is something wholly different than just being successful in business.
Yeah.
And I think you zero in on that in some pretty powerful ways, the way you tie it into things that happened in your life. One of them that resonated with me so much was the emphasis on your dad and the relationship
Mm.
that you had with your dad. I grew up with what may have been one of the greatest salesmen and business thinkers in the world, who came from nothing in the Bronx, and saw a man reading the Wall Street Journal one day and said, "I'm going to do that," and became very successful. And every night at the dinner table, he was giving us business lessons. And you talk about, not just wanting your father's, buy-in and approval because, he was an investor in the company, but, there was this very real rite of passage that you kind of talk about, I think, in not just getting his advice, but convincing him that what you were doing made sense, that the way you were going to do it made sense. Um, why was that such a big and important step for you?
I think the important thing to understand is that I had absolutely no background in business whatsoever. In fact, I sort of disdained business when I was uh, in my early 20s. I was a I thought of myself in my college days sort of as a democratic socialist, and that business was greedy and selfish, and I just I couldn't imagine myself doing business. I I was pursuing a degree in philosophy. I was really a seeker looking for the meaning of life and the purpose of life. Why are we here? What does it mean? Um, and you'll that theme, by the way, as you know, is woven all through the book. And my own discovery of my own purpose and my own spiritual development is all woven into the book. But going back to my dad had been he was a businessman. He had been an accounting professor for the first for 16 years at Rice University before he left Rice, and he was an accounting professor. So he started working for some of his clients, and then he got hired. He moved up corporate ladders until he ended up, his final position was CEO of a public hospital management corporation called LifeMark. And that business was sold eventually to, I think, Hospital Corporation of America, HCA, and my dad retired at that point. And so he knew a lot about business, and he knew he was a great accountant. And while we had been close when I was a younger boy growing up, and because we shared a love of sports, he we played he hit fly balls to me for years and years and years. I played baseball. He taught me how to play golf. And then basketball became my sport. That was something my dad wasn't interested in until I started playing it. And then he started getting interested in it. And then we, of course, I got into high school, or I got older, I got into college, and I sort of got a little alienated from both my parents. And um, and then when I had my without going and telling my whole story of the book, when I got interested in business was when I wanted to start a natural food store. I moved in this vegetarian food housing co-op, became a vegetarian, and sort of had a food awakening and got very excited about natural organic foods. And I just was super pumped about it, very excited about it. And I began to study it and read about it. And then I hatched this idea of starting my own small natural food store. And it's critical of the book. Not only was my dad instrumental, but my girlfriend at the co-op, Renee Lawson, at that time now, Renee Lawson Hardy, she was excited about it too. If she hadn't been excited, I'm not sure Whole Foods would exist. At least not the way that we created it. Some other thing would have probably exist, but not what we did. And since I starting this business up, I don't know anything about business. I don't have any money. So first thing my father did was help invest in the business, right? But then he also took me under his wing and began to mentor me. This was extremely good for our relationship. I got very close to my father again. He was my most trusted advisor and mentor. The first 16 years of Whole Foods Market's business existence, I really didn't make any important decisions that I didn't check out with him first, and which was a really smart thing to do because we would have failed. I'm sure I would have. I always like to say I would have driven the Whole Foods bus off a cliff if my dad was there to, grab the wheel before I did so. And uh, as a result, that helped us be successful. It brought us closer together. So close. My dad was my best man at my wedding. And then, of course, I do tell the story of the conflicts we began to have, and me asking him to leave the board back in the year 2000. No, 19. When was it, Dad? 1990. 1994 is when I asked my dad to leave the board, and because we'd been having all these big disagreements and fights and whatnot. And it was only a year later, after he left the board, that he got diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And that's when I realized, oh, that's why we were having all of those fights all the time,
Yeah.
because he was having these emotional swings. So my father was absolutely essential. And I would say for the first half of the book, the book is written in the first person. He is the second main character to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, in the second half of the book, and he goes into the darkness of Alzheimer's and eventually passes away. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think my dad was absolutely essential to our success. He invested money, but mostly he trusted me, and he taught me and trusted me, had faith in me. When you're just a young man starting out in the world and you don't have this background in business. Now, I did read literally hundreds of business books. I am sort of a bibliophile and a sponge. So it wasn't just my dad. I was, and by the way, when you're really interested in something, your learning is accelerated.
Mm-hmm.
I was a sponge. I read these books, and because I had to apply this in everyday business, it all made sense to me. I totally got into business, and my dad actually helped guide me on some of the books to read, which I mentioned in the book.
No, what I love though so much, and why I asked you that question, and I think you did a great job of answering it, is the humility and the humanity that comes out. Uh, that is a very important part of an entrepreneur, and we believe, and I think you believe as well, a very important part, an integral part of business. You cannot just be this guy who thinks he knows it all, or this person who just thinks they know it all, and they're all just about achieving some kind of extraordinary business success. It's more of a holistic idea of, I want to learn, I want to grow, and I want to grow as a human being, as a person, and it's all interconnected. And that's why I loved what you talked about when you very humbly talked about how you didn't know that much, and how you needed the advice and guidance, and you reached out for it. And but at the same time, there's that point at which you've got to stand up and find your own way as well. And so it's really an extraordinary template for the personal and business life of an entrepreneur. And it's so interesting how there's so many books that I've read by entrepreneurs and founders that don't tell that personal story and that personal side, and don't go deeply into the family background and whatnot. And my father, I mean, he was giving me advice till the day he died. And I think it's just something so age old, right? That maybe we've forgotten nowadays. But 1,000 years ago, or even 100 years ago, the idea of seeking out our elders for wisdom and thought and was commonplace. And now you don't hear about it as much. So I loved that connection to something that I think is so age old and so important, but it connects business to life, which should never be separated from that, because
No, it
business is a
shouldn't.
part of life. And I think you masterfully did that with this tie-in, to your father. Um, you also did it with another very interesting chapter and anecdote when you talked about this 100 years flood, that occurred in your early days. Something that could have completely ruined you. And you wrote something that is just it just startled me, and I want to read it real quickly because it's very stirring. You said, "As I stared at the soggy remains of Whole Foods Market, I felt much older than my 27 years. I wondered what it all meant about the future and about my future. It wasn't immediately clear that we could recover from this. Maybe God or the universe had passed judgment upon this particular dream. Maybe John Mackey wasn't meant to be a grocer after all. At the very least, I thought, Riley, that would please my mother. But then I thought about my father, who had been so supportive, investing his time and his money in the business. How would he feel if we failed? I didn't want to let him down or our other investors." This was fascinating to me on so many levels. But the idea of not just succeeding for yourself, but for others, and the idea of that very real doubt that we go through as a human being. I've read way too many books where I hear founders saying, "I never doubted myself for 1 minute. I knew absolutely that this was
They're
going to happen."
lying.
We were, yeah, and that's what I think every time. I say, that's impossible. There's no way a human being can be that confident. So I absolutely loved this. And, beyond what you wrote there, obviously, how did you feel at that moment? And what was it about wanting to achieve this for others that maybe pushed you forward more than anything else?
Well, imagine, I mean, I'm trying to raise capital for this business. And the people that invested their money invested it because they believed in me or trusted me. And I had a responsibility to them. They'd invested money yeah, my dad certainly had some money, but Renee is in, Renee's family's invested, friends of our families are investing, and it's the friends and family around, right? And
Hmm.
Renee and I were so young, and they believed in us. And I didn't want to let them down. I didn't want to have to, sure, there could be an excuse. Hey, we were doing really well and this flood came along, I mean, what can we do? I'm not to blame, but that wouldn't matter. They didn't trusted their money to us. And that's why I say the second happiest day of my life was when we did our IPO, because everyone that had initial public offering back in January 1992, because everyone that had believed in Renee and I were now paid off, not just paid off, they could exit the car. They could sell their shares if they wanted to. We were publicly traded for a huge gain over what they'd invested in initially back in 1978. So those 14 years, this was the first time they actually could exit. After they had to invest for 14 years before they actually could get a payday. But then from that point onward, I felt like, you know what? I have delivered to everyone that put their trust and faith in me and Renee. We have delivered on what we promised. and more so. And of course, most people didn't sell their stock immediately. Might have dribbled a little bit of it out, but they held on and had a much longer ride. So, but it was a relief for me because I felt like I still knew that there's all this growth ahead and challenges for the business, but I did feel like that I had not betrayed the trust that had been put in me, and I had delivered on that. And I sort of felt like a load was lifted off my shoulders. Uh, New loads come on, right? You have new responsibilities, but that one was fulfilled with the IPO.
So I love how you talk about responsibility there, and we just don't hear that enough. I think we certainly hear from you a lot in a lot of the talking and writing that you've done. But the idea of the responsibility of entrepreneurs or the responsibility of business people and founders, um, and you connect it to so many things in this book. Your family and the other people that are invested. Uh, but again, it's all connected to this whole life story, that you tell, and you talk about so much of how business and life is intertwined. You talk about your relationships and how there's an amazing juxtaposition in this book between the relationships that you were having, the romantic relationships at the time, and the company and the growth and how those are interrelated. And I think the big takeaway of that is there's no way to separate that personal life and that personal world from your business life and your business world. I would.
I want to underscore that, Chris, because there's a tendency for people to create these separations between, it's like, well, that's the business part.
Mhm.
This is the personal part. And it's like, hello, they're both the life part. We're alive. and
Mhm.
you can't separate those two. I mean, it took me a while before I made the decision. I'm not going to have another girlfriend that works for the company because every time, I did it 3 times, and all 3 times I had bad breakups. All 3 times. So when I met Deborah, she had nothing to do whatsoever at Whole Foods except shop there, and I didn't meet her shopping there. I met her it was a blind date. She didn't work there. That's the important thing. And of course, it was a different era back then. I would advise people today to not ever date anybody that works for the company, because the accusations that can be made to you in the breakups, particularly if you're male, can be completely ruin your life.
Yeah.
So, but there was a different era and different time, and there weren't that it was possible to have a workplace romance and not worry that you're going to get fired, your reputation was going to be destroyed, and you never get another job. So yeah, the work and the family, the work and the personal family, it's what it means to be a human being.
And that's really a wonderful segue into one of the last things I wanted to talk to you about today, which is that whole connection, the conscious capitalism that you then wrote a book about in detail. The idea of this very responsible perspective on being a founder and being a business person, being a leader, I think is a natural extension of that whole life and work are inexorably connected. And let me just say thank you, first of all, for how you did that and what you did, because that was the philosophical underpinnings of the whole idea of this network that we've created of social capital and finding the actual proof, the capital that comes from being a conscious capitalist, and it's extraordinary. Um, Looking back now, and it's been a few years since you coined that term, and since you wrote that book, you know, I see a world in the CEOs that we interview, and we find more and more every day that adhere to those ethical principles of trying to make the world a better place with capitalism. I see every day how that is exploding and growing, and creating so much opportunity out there. But yet I hear from so many people how, oh no, business is terrible. The majority of business people don't operate that way. Capitalism is bad. You're not in that category or group that believes that. You know, uh, do you believe that capitalism and business can is and can continue to make the world a better place? And why do you believe that?
Well, first, I don't make this distinction between like good capitalism and bad capitalism, or conscious capitalism and non-conscious capitalism. That sort of this. I think of it as more on a continuum, and uh, we. I think capitalism. Not saying they're not bad actors in business. There are bad actors in business. There are evil people in business, but there are evil people that are doctors, and there are evil people that are in government, and there are evil people that are lawyers. I don't think there are more evil people in business than there are in other professions. And the amazing thing about business is that whether you're conscious of the fact that stakeholders exist or not is irrelevant. They do exist because you're in
Mm.
this business ecosystem that has customers, has employees, has suppliers, has investors within communities that we exist in, and with the larger environment that we're all part of. So whether you like it or not, we're all connected, or the interdependencies are there. And the wonderful thing about any type of business is that it has to ultimately create value for its customers.
Hmm.
And so by doing that, it is arguably, I mean, you can find exceptions to this, that some businesses make products that harm people, but they are providing things that people want, even things that are bad for them. Sugar may not be good for you, but most people do eat it. And you can argue that their market's giving people what they want. You can, but not to get us too far afield on that one. I do just want to say that business has to satisfy customers. It has to create value for people, or it fails. And then it usually has to do that. And you sometimes single proprietorships where some guy's just working by himself. But usually, if a business has any scale to it, it has employees. And so you're providing jobs for people, and then that they get paid money and they help satisfy customers. And then the money that those employees get, they can buy houses, they have families, and it ripples out. And then the suppliers that are trading with the business, when you trade with those suppliers, they're not forced to trade, just like no one's forced to work for you. They do it
Yeah.
voluntarily because they think it's in their best interest. So the ripple effects of business trading with whatever it be, paper supply companies, a gas company, um, all the whatever. If you're a food retailer like Whole Foods Market, then you're not growing all your food and manufacturing it. You have a network, in Whole Foods case, of literally tens of thousands of suppliers around the world that are partnering with you for mutual gain. And then you have these communities that you're providing taxes for, you're making donations to, that are that you're part of, and you provide jobs in those communities that you're part of, and so you have these community impacts. My point is that as business does all of these things, as it creates value for customers, as it provides jobs for its employees, as it trades with suppliers, as it creates profits for investors that in a sense can compound over time, that you're creating wealth, which is not to be underestimated. It's one of the most important things business does, is create prosperity and wealth. And then the governments, I mean, where do governments get their money? Ultimately, it all comes from business, ultimately, because if you're taxing people, where they get their money, they got it from jobs, and and so business kind of makes the world go around. And so capitalism is inherently sort of good because it now the thing is, it can be, if you do it consciously, you can make it a lot better. You can make it
Hmm.
as good as business is, and I think it is inherently good, and I think capitalism is good. When we're conscious capitalists, when we understand these interdependencies, these connections, and we try to act in a very ethical, caring way towards all of our stakeholders so that they all flourish, business can do even more good. And if it's consciously philanthropic, if it's involved in its communities to try to help improve its communities that it's part of, then business is this powerful force for good in the world. And it's more interesting to get into a conversation some other time, perhaps, of why business is so disdained by so many people when by almost all the, if you think about it, if you look at the objective facts, businesses is instrumental to improving our world. And most of the judgments about business are ultimately judgments about people, that people want things that they shouldn't want, right? I mean, what if you think about pornography? You say, well, that's a bad industry, except that again, if people didn't want pornography, it wouldn't be produced. Same thing could be said about cigarettes and tobacco or almost any of the vices. They're being, so business is often judged for being evil because it produces these things, but yet it's producing it because people continue to buy them. And it's so the judgment about business is really a judgment about people's preferences.
Yeah. And you're right. You're right.
Don't approve.
Yeah, I mean, and that is an awesome conversation that we could have another time for about a half an hour. And I really actually like that idea, and I think we may have to have you back to have that one because that would
I would
very,
enjoy it. I've enjoyed our conversation today, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Likewise. So, thank you so much. I just want to wrap up real quickly then by letting people know what are you doing now? What's John Mackey doing now?
I've co-founded another business with some people from Whole Foods that about my age that are also retired from Whole Foods, including Walter Robb and Glenda Flanagan and Jim Sudd, who were key executives at Whole Foods for a number of years, Betsy Foster. And it's called Love Life and love.life. If you can find our website at www.love.life. There's no .com, just love.life. And I'm particularly excited because it's really what we're going to be opening up are these one-stop holistic health centers. So the first one we're opening up is going to be in the LA area, July 9th. We've almost got it built out now. July 9th, it opens up, and it's in an old Best Buy in El Segundo, California, in the LA area, south of the airport, in the Beach Cities area. And it's going to have a healthy restaurant. It's going to have a fitness center, a gym, yoga, Pilates. It's going to have a spa, all types of recovery modalities that'll be there. We have 3 pickleball courts that we have. We've got a medical center. And we're trying to re-envision what doctors do. Because most of the time people go see a doctor when something's wrong, when they're sick, right? Or something's failing. Our vision is that the doctor, we now have the testing, the assessments, and the technology that we can get somebody to come in and go through our programs. We can give them sort of a report card of where they are on the health continuum. We're all on a health continuum. And once you understand your baseline, then you can work with a doctor and a wellness coach to develop an individualized precision plan for you personally that will help you take your health and wellness to a higher level. You can become healthier. It's not inevitable. It's inevitable you're going to die, but it's not inevitable that you have to be diseased and have a long portion of your life in chronic illness, such as obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, things like these. These are really preventable and in many cases reversible diseases. So our vision is that the doctor's real job is to keep people from getting sick, to keep people from needing a doctor. And so that's the vision. We think over time, we'll disrupt. The goal is in the next 20 years for people to be thinking about doctors in a completely different way. And I'm very excited about it. We have some great doctors that we're working with in El Segundo. And I'll tell you something, Chris, about the first 20 years Whole Foods Market existed, people would come into our stores for the first time and they'd never been in a store like that. People don't realize what grocery supermarkets were like, 30 or 40 years ago. So totally different than they are today because so many of them have changed because of Whole Foods. But people would say, I've never been in a grocery store like this. I've been looking for a store like this my whole life, and now I've just discovered it. When they come into Love Life for the first time, people are going to look around and they'll walk around, they'll turn around and say, how come nobody's done this before? This is such a terrific idea. I want to be part of this. This is exciting. And so July 9th, and I don't know, where do you live?
I'm in Phoenix, which I'm right down the road. So I might have to come by and say hi.
Yeah, don't come on July 9th because but let me know when you're coming and I'll give you a personal tour. I'll make sure I'm in LA when you come when you visit.
Okay, that sounds like a very exciting thing to do, and we definitely want to give some great notoriety to that. Our most read article of the year was on well-being, as it relates to business and businesses that help to improve the well-being of their customers, their employees, so on and so forth, people in the community. It's on everybody's mind,
Yeah.
and I am sure that with you being in that field now and doing what you're doing with this new company, that you will revolutionize that the way you did, the retail grocery market
What's going
as
to
well.
happen is we're going to get a lot of imitators because again, people are going to be excited by what they see.
Hmm.
And one of Whole Foods' impacts was it just influenced other. Not only did we have our own customers and our own very successful business, but other businesses copied what we did.
Yeah.
And, that's going to happen with Love Life. Probably, we live in a world today where people see new things quicker than they used to because of smartphones and the internet. And I'm pretty sure people are going to be coming in with their cameras and showing. I mean, Love Life's going to, our location will be a secret about 15 minutes after we open up.
Well, I can't wait to see that and to hear about it more. So we'll definitely have to have you back to talk about that as well. As soon as that's up and running, because we want to hear all the exciting,
It's Chris, it
effects
sounds
of
like you
that.
have a great organization. So let me congratulate you on what you're doing. It sounds like you're doing a
Thank
lot of
you.
good. You're doing a lot of good in the world, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And like I said, you're a big part of why and how we did this. And so I look forward to a long relationship with you and talking to you more about all kinds of things in the future. Everybody out there, make sure you go and read this book, The Whole Story, Adventures in Love, Life, and Capitalism. And you will know John Mackey in a way that you never have before, and you will like him even more because of it. So
I hope
thank you,
so.
John. Thank you, John,
Okay.
very much. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Chris. I look
Okay,
forward to our next conversation.
absolutely. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye bye.